Hi everybody, I'm going to share some ideas regarding neural data protection. So there are increasing contexts not related to healthcare in which neural data, that is, information about a person's neural mechanisms, is being collected, analyzed, and applied. For instance, there are different educational institutions and companies that mine data from students or employees for learning or labor enhancement, and these situations may involve problematic violations of mental privacy. This concern supports the idea that neural data access and control needs a stronger legal protection than other kinds of personal information. In this vein, Sarah Koenig and Rafael Yuste recently claimed that neural data protection could be grounded on our right to bodily integrity. Treating neural data as a body organ or as organic tissue entails, for instance, that patients can only consent to their donation for altruistic purposes, but not to their commercialization. In a recent visit to South America, Yuste claimed that each country should implement this organic approach to neural data as part of a set of constitutional neuro rights. And being the first country that shaped this idea into a bill that will be considered by its Senate during this year, Chile has become a pilot case. However, to the best of my knowledge, this proposal has not yet been subject to philosophical discussion, and I think that this is necessary because it is based on conceptual assumptions that have concrete practical implications, but are nonetheless not appropriately grounded. From a legal standpoint, treating something as something else requires some kind of analogical reasoning. Thus, in order to do the job, the organic approach needs an analogy showing similarities between neural data and organic tissue. But Goring and Yuste do not provide any argument of this kind. So, in this presentation, I will try to ground their conclusion that neural data deserves a special protection on an alternative analogy showing similarities between neural data and neurocognitive properties of our brains. If this analogy works, then neural data could be protected by psychological instead of bodily integrity. The main disanalogy between neural data extraction and body organ harvesting is that the former does not involve any organic material transfer. This can be explained by using the distinction between information replication and transfer. Information transfer is simply moving an information-carrying object from a source to a receiver, such as when we mail a letter to another person. By contrast, communication through replication consists in reproducing a new, materially different copy of a message at another point of a network, such as when we send a file from one computer to another, or the spread of a viral infection through direct contact. Unlike a biopsy, in which the tissue containing medical data is extracted and preserved for analysis, neural data harvesting is often a case of information replication. This can be exemplified by EEG recording. In this case, data contained in neural waves of ions is replicated by a materially different signal constituted by electrons in EEG electrodes, which are affected by or correlated with those waves. And then data is replicated again by the digital signal of the electronic memory in the device. This means that the neural data register that is kept for analysis is often not constituted by any organic material at all. So the key question is whether the non-organic properties that do define neural data are analogous to something that is constitutive of ourselves. We saw that neural data is fundamentally information about neural processes and states. Our ability to think and reason about mental states of the brain suggests that our brain actually instantiates and processes the specific kind of information that defines neural data. However, this is insufficient for building an analogy. My mental states belong to myself insofar as they are instantiated in my brain and not in other brains. But information in itself can be instantiated in multiple brains. It can flow into other brains through learning and communication. Specifically, other brains can have access to information about my brain through their theory of mind or mind-reading systems. Nevertheless, this kind of information is only supposed to belong to me. Is there a sense in which my neural data is part of my brain's identity or individuality, although it can also be present in other brains? This would require to show that it has a stronger ontological connection to my brain than to any other. I will suggest that my neural data is part of myself because it is a feature that is unique to my brain's cognitive architecture. It defines how my brain works in the sense that only my brain has a mechanism dedicated to process this specific kind of information. How is my neural data instantiated in other brains? A widely studied mechanism that processes information about brains, or more specifically about their mental states, is the so-called theory of mind or mind-reading system. This system is dedicated to process in general information about the mental states of any brain. Therefore, when information about my brain is instantiated in the mind-reading system of other brain, this would be a contingent feature in that system. It does not define how the system works in the sense that it could work perfectly well even if it did not have access to this particular kind of information. It could simply process information about other brains. How is my neural data instantiated in my brain? I think that the domain of the so-called neuronal global workspace, a system underlying access consciousness, is plausibly defined by this kind of information. This system is constituted by a set of cortical neurons, mostly pyramidal cells, that send projections to many distant areas through long-range excitatory axons and produce large-scale or global signals that make information about a given cognitive state in any brain system, say a perceptual state of my visual system, available to all the other systems of my brain. The key observation is that global signals depend on channels, these pyramidal neurons, that have our own brain systems as their exclusive sources. That is, they only broadcast information about our own mental states. The system works as some kind of interoceptive mechanism in this sense. This means that its domain is defined by information about my brain. Therefore, this kind of information is plausibly part of our cognitive architecture. Although the cognitive architectures of different brains may have many common properties, the information that defines neural data about a particular brain is a unique element in that brain's architecture. So, unlike other kinds of personal information, the extraction and diffusion of information about my brain is not merely something I have the right to control, but fundamentally part of what I am, of my neurocognitive identity. Therefore, this capacity could be protected by our right to psychological integrity. This idea could be the conceptual and legal basis for making neural data protection more stringent than the protection of other kinds of personal information, as Goring and Yuste recommend.